this whole bushing is missing. And how the hell does that happen? Alright, what's this mess inside the car? So, CD009 swap. There's no vehicle speed sensor on the trans like there is for the RB25 trans. So, we are going to use this Dakota Digital box to get the speedometer working again. I am going to use the ABS sensor on the snout of the rear diff. Dakota Digital tech support ended up being really helpful, so thank you Dakota Digital. Going back and forth on a few emails, we decided this is how we're gonna wire it up. So power, I'm pulling from switched power from my cigarette lighter. Ground, got a body ground with the paint cleaned off right there. 15 is pin BC15, straight from the ABS computer in the trunk. This is a light blue wire. I believe pin 17 is the other side of that ABS sensor on the diff, and this should be black with a white tracer. And then these go to input and speed minus respectively. And so we're gonna intercept this signal, and the Dakota Digital Tech says we only need to intercept this signal to go to the cluster. So yeah, I got service manual open with all these bookmarks. You can see this instrument cluster for the speedometer, not so straightforward. So we take the 2-wire vehicle speed sensor off the RB trans. It goes straight into the instrument cluster, and then the instrument cluster does some FM, some freaking magic, and it gives 2 pulses, and this is pin 16 to the computer. So from what the tech says, we do not need the pulse input minus. We're just going to intercept this pulse input plus with the Dakota box and then feed it back pulse input plus only to the speedometer. So technically now, key on, if I jack up the rear wheels and turn the wheels, my speedometer should work. So why don't we give it a shot? Oh yeah! And then last but not least, the kind of headache to find wire. MA15 should be GR/R, which means gray wire with a red tracer. So yeah, should be this. There's 3 connectors for the instrument cluster. Should be this black connector, and then sure enough, back here, it's this wire right there. That wire right there, gray with a red tracer, and I just cut a slit and wrapped a wire around it. I'm gonna go through here, and then once I get, the proof of concept working, I'll route these wires cleanly so you won't even know. So I'm gonna put the instrument cluster back in, turn the key on, see if that speedometer is gonna work. There's a setup for this too before anything, so I'm gonna set this guy up first. So fingers crossed, and we'll come back.
A few moments later.
Alright, so I think I got it. Setup is definitely a little bit of a headache, but pretty cool. I can send out a reference signal so the speedometer should work without the car moving, to make sure I have this wired up correctly. I already tested it, but yeah, I want to show you guys this wizardry. So let's see. Ref. Okay, so now watch. Press this. Bam. And then at a certain point, the doors will lock, because at a certain speed, the doors auto lock on this thing. Then the door should lock. Oh, I guess they're already locked, but yeah, cool. Looks like I got this thing wired correctly.
The next day.
Back again next day on a Saturday, here to try to figure this guy out. So where I was at last time, if you notice, I have my gray with red tracer, the speedometer wire, on output 3 today. I had it on output 1 yesterday. Why is that? So yesterday on the way home, I almost didn't make it home because this thing read way too fast, right? There's a fuel cut if you hit 180. So I had to get off the freeway real quick because the car was hitting fuel cut when I wasn't really going anywhere. So yeah, finally got it figured out. I'm within like 1 or 2 kilometers per hour. I can fine tune it later, but at least I have a working speedometer and odometer now, which is great. So yeah, why don't we go over the setup of this guy, also go over the cool app that Dakota Digital has, which simplified this process a lot more, because if you look at this manual, it's a whole bunch of like and then going into the wrong menus. The app made this 100 times easier. Dexter, there's food inside, you don't have to eat your foot. All right, so key on, We can see our red lights illuminated, so this guy should be good. I found this absolutely hilarious. So we downloaded the Dakota Digital app, and you get this stern message: you must go to settings and enable Bluetooth. Man, last night in my fatigue, I thought, man, is my dad yelling at me? We're going to connect to this cryptic device, the DDXS-A45C Terminator from Cyberdyne. And cool, here's the app. So we're going to go into setup, speed, and so here are my settings, right? And these are going to be different depending on your application. So basically, how did I get these numbers, or how did I get these settings? So let's take a look at the instruction manual. So to start, I knew this was way too fast, and I had the speedometer on output 1. So there's a clue for us. So you guys can see I had 2 thick pieces of paper that I had to reference for this thing. And here's the email I got from tech support. So if you look at this, forget the high in, high out, low in, low out. Let's forget that for a second. If we look, output 1 and 2 are the same as the input. So that VSS, as fast as it's reading, no wonder this guy's gonna read that fast too. So what does that mean? I need to lower this down so that it's what it reads up here on the speedometer is gonna read less than the input from the VSS on the rear diff. So my next step, that's why I changed to output 3 was half enough. And so the answer was no. With output 3 being half, you can see the lowest calibration value. So the most you can slow it down is 0.25. With output 3 and then calibrated at 0.25, this thing still read way too fast. So what I mean by way too fast, let's say at 20 kilometers per hour, I was still reading like 50. So you could tell from that the balance is still off, right? I'm at the lowest end of the spectrum and the speedo is still reading way too fast. So what was my next step? Now we're getting close, right? We know we're gonna use output 3. So now we gotta choose the next setting. So my input type, I know it's a high speed input type because it's a VSS on the diff. It's gonna be high speed. Don't worry about pull up, only turn pull up on if it says it's required in the manual. So high speed VSS, we're gonna not worry about pull up. And then the next setting we gotta worry about input output. So right now it's a high input and then a low output. How did I know to choose that one? So again, this user guide, right? I know I have to slow output 3 even slower than half. So what's the next step? A 16th, and if that didn't work, you could go even slower. You could put the speedometer wire on output 4 to slow this down even more to a 32nd of what the VSS is reading. So we have our wire on the speedo wire on output 3 and then set to high in and low out. And then I could tell I was getting close because now with my calibration value at 0.25, the speedo read way too slow. So let's say I was at 60, it was probably reading at like 25. So how do we correct that? So in my calibration value, we gotta speed it up, right? So we gotta keep increasing it. And I would increase in steps, right? So I did 0.25, 0.5, 0.1, 0.1, 0.15. 0.15 got me really close. I mean like around 5 kilometers an hour away. So in the instructions, they want you to stick at around 60 miles an hour because that's the most accurate they say it's the most accurate for calibration. And if you look down there, it'll actually give you a real-time GPS speedo of how fast you're actually going. So when this read 60 kilometers per hour, I wanted to match up so my cluster read 60 kilometers an hour. And so with a friend in the passenger seat, I just tell him to keep increasing this until these matched. Vice versa, if the speedometer read too fast, you tell your buddy to keep decreasing this until finally these are the same. You're actually going 60 and the speedometer is reading 60. This big stack of paper is actually the email chain back and forth I've been having with the Dakota Digital tech support. And there's actually a smarter way to do this. You can actually go through the app, go through diagnostic mode, see what output frequencies you get from your VSS, and then what input frequencies from the cluster you require, which is pretty brilliant. And then again, in this thick manual, you can actually really do the math and get really close to the exact calibration you need. This was a long and dirty way to do it. To put it simply, I didn't want to do the math. But yeah, I think a great way to think about this, the high in, low out, those settings, if you think of it like a triple beam balance, those settings would be the biggest weight on a triple beam balance. And then once you get close with your big weight, there's 2 more scales, right? And I would say the final calibration would be the small scale on your triple beam balance. So it was easier for me to think about it that way. Like if your little scale is maxed out either way, then you know, okay, well, my big scale needs to move down or up depending. So I hope that helped you guys out, thinking of these 2 scales, the high and low, and then also the fine calibration as big and little weights on a triple beam balance. So yeah, we are literally going to wrap this up and get this routed cleanly in the chassis. And I plan to move my dog, come on, mount the box right there for easy access, and tuck the wires down there. Of course, being Asian, you gotta have your Asian tissue papers in your glove box.
Many unbearable hours later.
You notice it's dark outside, but bonus round. So I've had 2 nagging things bothering me about the car. Once in a while, I'd get a clicking noise, either starting to reverse. It'd be intermittent. Like today, I was just rolling the car backwards in neutral and be like click, click, click. All these headaches with the drive shaft and pinion angle, I was really hoping that I didn't have to pull that drive shaft back out because something was wrong with it. Another thing, under heavy load, hard XL, I'd get almost like a loud rattling noise, kind of like you had a heat shield that was really loose. Driving home with the seats out yesterday in preparation to route the Dakota Digital wires, I noticed it was removing that back seat really helped me isolate the noise, and it was towards the rear tunnel. You could really hear it without that lower cushion isolating that NVH. So I'm pretty confident I know what the 2 noises are now. Thank God they're not the trans or the drive shaft. Well, kind of the drive shaft. We'll go take a look and see what I'm talking about. All right, so that ticking noise in the back almost sounded like there was parking brake hardware loose or something in there, and that's the best way I can describe it. But sure enough, grabbing the wheel and moving it side to side, I could pretty much get the whole knuckle to go up towards the back like that. And lo and behold, what did I find? Sorry about the lighting. You guys can't tell. This whole bushing is missing. How the hell does that happen? All right, so if you guys watch my Hikest Elite video for this, I also installed all new poly bushings from GK Tech. They come like this. I vaguely remember I had a tough time with that bushing. I think when I pressed it in, if you see this lip, or maybe the whole face of it tore off. I didn't think much of it just because this is of how thick this bushing is. That arm covers both sides of that knuckle bushing. I thought, yeah, there's no way that bushing is going to, or like, yeah, that bushing should still be fine, but apparently not. I don't know how the hell the whole thing fell out or got torn over time, but I guess, lesson for me, this big and heavy of a car and these big ass wheels and how much power this thing puts down. I guess lesson for all of us, there should be no compromise. If these even get slightly damaged when you press them in, time to put in a new one. So luckily I got spares, so I can use a C-clamp or something to push this guy in. I've seen people cut these in half and put them in. Obviously I'm not gonna do that, so yeah, lesson learned. Let's go take a look at that heat shield rattle type noise.
A few moments later.
Alright, so kind of coincidentally, I've been doing a deep dive on Google, like rattle noise only under load, because that's exactly what this thing does. And it's like cruising, putting power down in 6th on the freeway, almost no noise. And the noise is kind of intermittent, even at low speed, low acceleration. Sometimes it'll appear, it'll be like ting ting. But especially, let's say, like power down in 2nd or 3rd, I can get it all the time. When you power down, it'll be like, or more like, and so what did I find? So yeah, coincidentally, deep dive on Google, I guess some modern M cars like M4, M5, 2-piece drive shafts flex so much that the parking brake cables actually contact the drive shaft sometimes and create that noise. And they actually have a TSB for that to bend the mounts a little bit so that when the 2-piece drive shaft flexes under load, they won't contact the parking brake cables. Similar to what's going on here. So if you guys watched part 7 and know about the pinion angle saga, I flipped these bushings upside down to lift the nose of the diff. And the unhappy consequence right there, the drive shaft gets really close to these clips that hold the parking brake cables in tandem. Good thing for longevity, but bad thing because it exacerbates my problem. bigger, stronger U-joints, which also makes less clearance between that clip right there and the nose and the drive shaft yoke. I'm gonna try to bend these guys out of the way. I noticed they're cut at an angle, the same angle as these U-joints, and it's gonna be tough to see, but all these U-joints, you can see they've been rubbing on something, and both sides of those holders for the parking brake cables are worn like that. And what I assume is happening under heavy load, this guy deflects even higher. The rear U-joints are hitting those holders for the parking brake cables. I'm not really surprised. Big, heavy turbo car with big wheels, old ass rubber that's probably compressing even more. Same thing, check out that diff bushing, long overdue to get replaced. So yeah, the game plan, I think I have to run poly bushings in the back of the diff because I still need to have some flexibility for pinion angle. Those front two, I think I can get away with solid diff bushings, but I might have a friend custom machine the top one, and then I can add washers on top of that diff bushing to change the pinion angle if need be. But yeah, in the interim, I'm gonna bend up those parking brake cable holders. They're more like spring clips. Yeah, cross your fingers. I'm pretty confident those are my two annoying noise issues. And yeah, could have been a lot worse, so. So yeah, I'll do some more research, get some parts ordered up, do a little bit more work, and we'll follow up again next time.